So thank you guys for joining. As you might know now, I'm Carolina Moreno. I'm one of the co-founders of the Digital Nomads Association Colombia. So we're going to host this webinar today. We are 13 people now, so I think we can just go ahead and start. So how this is going to work, I'm going to give a little presentation about myself, and then the association, what's the association, what we do. This is going to be really short. And then after this, Mateo is going to start with her presentation and is going to give us all the important information we need. So, okay. Let me see. So the Digital Nomads Association Colombia started as a nonprofit organization registered in Colombia last year in December. And we want to connect, guide, and inspire digital nomads in Colombia, and also connecting them with locals and local business. So that's what we do. Nadia Cortez is the general director. I think she's here, so she can just do a little presentation about herself. So you can go ahead, Nadia.
Sure. Let me open my camera. So yes, I don't know if you guys can hear me and see me because I have like some technical problems. So yeah, but I think everything is okay. So hello guys, my name is Nadia. So I'm the co-founder and president and director of the Digital Nomad Association Colombia. I'm so happy that you are here, to all of you. So I can see it's Ruby, yeah, so which is one of our members, and itself also is a member of the Digital Nomad Association. So hello to everyone. So I'm a digital nomad from Bogota. So I'm so happy to be here. And so the Digital Nomad Association Colombia is a non-profit organization. So we aim to connect, to guide, and to inspire digital nomads in Colombia. So in relation to their experience with their locals. So we, as Carolina said, we are a non-profit organization. So you are very welcome to join as a member of the Digital Nomads Association. So you can go to our website, so dnapol.com. So yeah, so very welcome to this webinar, and thanks to Mateo, which is like our speaker today, and thanks to Carolina, the director of communications of the Digital Nomads Association, to be the host of this webinar. So thanks guys for everything.
All right, thank you, Nadia. So Maria, she's the director of products and special projects. She's from Canada. She is not here. And then Francois, he's also from Canada. He's the director of technology. Laura Morales, she's also Colombian. She's our community manager. And Maria Consuelo Perez, she's our events and operations manager. As Nadia said, I'm in charge of the communications for the association. I'm from Bucaramanga, here in Colombia. So I'm really happy to be part of this project. I put my heart on it. So thank you everybody for being here again. And this is two of our ambassadors, Johnny Rios, who is the admin of this Facebook groups that you might see, Gringo Paisa, Gringo Rolo, Gringo Caleño. So he is our ambassador, and John Darwin, he is in Madrid right now. He's also Colombian, and he's a business consultant. Okay, so now I'm gonna ask everybody to mute, and then at the end, we're gonna have some space for questions. So Mateo is gonna do his whole presentation, and then just save your questions for the end, and we can answer them all. You can just raise your hand at the end, or just type your question in the chat, and we can just like read it out loud. So thank you, Mateo, again for being here, and you can start introducing yourself and telling us all about this webinar and this important topic for all of us.
Thank you, Carolina. Thank you to the Digital Nomad Association. And thank you everyone for attending to this webinar called The Do's and Don'ts of the Real Estate Market in Colombia. So my name is Mateo Monsalve. I'm an attorney here in Colombia. I've had experience working with financial law, with real estate law. I've had the opportunity throughout this journey, this entrepreneurial journey of 5 years, to help out people who are coming into the country with matters related to legal, corporate, real estate, immigration. So we're always very happy to provide value from our business group. And we'll also like to take this opportunity and this space to provide value through this webinar. So the proposal I have for you for this webinar is that we'll divide it into 3 sections. The first section will be a general scope of the real estate market in Colombia as of 2000 to 2010. So we'll basically get an idea of what the real estate market looked like and what a real estate investor would be looking at from 2000 to 2010 here in Colombia. The second section will be basically talking about the current opportunity and the current situation that we have in the country. And ultimately, we'll talk about investing in Colombia as a foreigner, the things that you should keep into account, that you should have in mind when you're going to invest in Colombia as a foreigner. So that being said, let's get started. So the first situation that I wanted to address with you, I wanted to talk about a general scope of the real estate market in Colombia. As I mentioned, this would comprehend 2000. Basically, I have information from 1990 to 2022. Right now, we will analyze what comprehends the time frame between the 1990s and the starts of the 2000s. So we're taking into account in this graph cities, major cities such as Bogotá, Medellín, Cartagena, Cali, and Barranquilla, and other cities. It's very important that we keep in mind a very particular situation of the country as well in terms of why we're taking into account major cities. And it's also due to the violent situation in the country. There was a lot of influx of people coming into the city. So that's why taking into account the major cities will be the most representative way to look at the market, at least from this scope. So as you can see from the section, from the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s, we were looking at a real estate market that was very unstable, that will fluctuate heavily. That was due to a violent situation, a very strong violent situations that we were foreseeing in the country at the moment. Now, don't mistake me, the violence in Colombia is still present in some areas. Nevertheless, you can just see how different the situation is compared to how it was, just based on the effect it has had or it has in the real estate market. For instance, right now we can look at a period of more stability. Meanwhile, back in the day, Colombia was even declared a failed state in 1999. All right. These are general costs of property acquisition. Also, it's important to take into account the rental market, what it looked like in that period from the 2000s to 2010. Basically, the international market, especially when we look at places such as the US real estate market, has rules that are comprehended as golden rules. For example, the 1% rule, which states that a property in which you invest must be at least giving you back 1% in rental return in order to be able to be a good investment. Now, when we look at the local scope of the situation and the regulations here in Colombia, it's quite the opposite. Basically, the regulation in Colombia here states that a property's rental value cannot be above 1% if it's a residential rental. That's something that's important to take into consideration that we'll mention further ahead into the presentation. So here is basically a roundup of cost from the acquisition of a property. It's important to take into account that these are acquisition costs. When you acquire a property, there are also ownership costs, such as, for instance, if you need to pay the HOA or have basic billing such as water, electricity, and also property taxes that vary in terms of amount and how regularly you need to pay them depending on where the property is located. So in order to be able to perform a full acquisition without any type of problems, you need to make sure that the property's taxes have been paid, that it has no liens, at least to make sure that the transaction of the title has been done successfully. All right, please. So how does due diligence look like in Colombia for real estate investors? Due diligence in Colombia, first of all, requires an item that's commercial research. You will realize that Colombia has no MLS. Therefore, there is a requirement for real estate investors to perform a research or to have a professional who performs a research to make sure that the price of the property that they're investing into is the right one, that they're actually making a good investment. Now, besides that, it's important to also have in mind other risk aspects that need to be taken into account and looked at, which are looked at through title search, title evaluations, just to make sure that past owners have not been involved in money laundering or narco trafficking activities. Also to make sure that the property doesn't have any type of liens or administrative liens. And as a bonus of this presentation, this is a little bit of a piece of advice and of knowledge that is not sure amongst many attorneys. Just a few specialists know also about this item that you need to verify, specifically when you're investing into rural areas, into a cottage, into a big piece of land for agricultural manufacturing or processes. Sorry, not manufacturing, agricultural business processes. So it's important for you to verify the restitution of land of the property. Now, this is a variant that basically came out of the peace treaty that was held in 2016, 2017. And it's important for you to verify when you're getting this type of properties that is not involved in a restitution of land process. Now, taking this information into account, you can see that from the 2000 and to 2010 period, the real estate investment looked like what it looked like for investors was not based on rental return, rather on the valuation that the property will gain through time. Now, we know that currently Colombia is in the midst of a touristic boom. This is due to various situations. And this touristic boom has helped emerge a new type or a new investment model in Colombia that actually gives much higher returns. So we can look at the touristic boom in the next presentation. As you can see, basically the situation from 2010 onwards was a steady increase of tourism inflow coming to the country. Previously to the pandemic, we had a 4.5 million visitors in 2019. Now in 2022, just last year, we know we had 4.6 million visitors, and the projection for this year looks like we'll be having much more visitors. Now, this is due to various situations related to, for example, the political situation or geopolitical situation in different parts of the world, such as around the China-Taiwan situation, Russia and Ukraine, the cost of living in Colombia, for instance, in major cities such as Medellin, it's about 30% of the immediate cost of living in the US. The lifestyle that you can get through that type of cost of living is quite good. The weather that you get throughout the whole year here, whereas in other parts of the world, you're facing problems such as droughts or just fires, etc., due to global warming or climate change. And due to the political stability also of the country, which has been put into question due to the recent government. Nevertheless, our expectation for this is that this will be quite a stable period, that not many changes will be made, as we've seen through the recent reforms not going through, the reforms that have been presented by the current government. So that's basically the expectation that we have for that. Taking that into account, not only thanks to the influx of tourists, but also thanks to the influx of another type of visitor, which will be a more permanent visitor or a resident. We can proceed with the next presentation. We have now got a new type of investment model, which is the short-term or mid-term rental model. Now, this investment model is offering average returns that go from 1.3 to 3.2%. We can go into the next presentation. To 3.2%. Basically, this return is made through commercial rentals, not residential rentals, which is a very important distinction to make between this and the type of investment that we're talking about that real estate investors used to have. Obviously, this is due to the increase of visitors into the country. It's also important to point out that you can get to this type of investments and this type of returns through individual investments, such as getting an apartment by yourself and renovating it, getting contractors to do so, or simply contacting projects that are already being developed and sum up into that what we denominate the cooperative investment. So finally, we will look at this final section, which is taking into account here we just take into account the last part of the increase of prices, what I was mentioning in terms of a more stable market in terms of rentals and real estate prices. We can move forward. Now, what you must take into account when investing in Colombia as a foreigner, besides obviously the numbers that we already discussed, the first thing that many would ask themselves is whether they can buy property in Colombia as a foreigner, if they can do so with just their passport. The answer for that is yes, you can do so with just your passport. Another thing that you must take into account in order to have everything ready when you're thinking about investing in Colombia as a foreigner is what are your goals when you're making these investments? Are your plans to acquire a residency? Are you focused on the returns that you will be getting thanks to this investment? Do you wish to get both? The reason why this is important to determine at the beginning for you as a foreign investors is because this will set the path, the right path for you to follow when it comes to making your investment. For instance, if you wish to, for example, acquire a real estate investor visa throughout your investment, it's also very important that your investment is properly registered upon the Central Bank of Colombia. There are different methods for you to bring funds into Colombia. There are some that are more cost effective than others, but not all of them fill in the requirements that you need to fill in order to be able to reach all of your goals. So that's why it's important for you to keep that into account. It's also important to think about the risks that come along investing in Colombia. I've mentioned beforehand, there are risks to investing in Colombia. And it's very important for you to be able to know these risks in order for you to be able to manage them accordingly. So some of the risk, for instance, there are some examples that we can cite, some famous examples here in Antioquia, for instance. One is the Space Towers case, and another would be the Meritage case, for example. The Space Towers case basically was related to a poor developer, a developer that wasn't using the right materials for the development, ultimately leading to the towers collapsing and investors unfortunately losing their investment. Another case would be the Meritage case, in which basically, to sum it up, in the line of ownership, there was a past owner who was involved in money laundering and narco trafficking activities. Therefore, the government ended up seizing the property, and the people who were involved in that investment ended up being involved in a long process in order to be able to recover the investment that they made. So there certainly are risks. Nevertheless, we can cite examples such as the case of the Continental Investment. That was a case similar to the Space Towers. Nevertheless, in this case, there was an insurance company involved that responded for everything. So insurances are a good example of how you can protect your investment. Performing a throughout title research is another very good example of how to protect your investment. Do you need an attorney to invest in Colombia? No. Do I suggest that you get one? Yes, and not just any type of attorney, just getting a specialist in real estate investments, just to make sure that you're not liable to this type of risk, or at least that you're able to reduce them as much as possible. Another type of risk that people might come to mind. Oh, also through this type of title research, there are SAR verifications, etc., to avoid eventually being your property being seized by the government due to being involved in money laundering and these type of activities. Ultimately, there will be another risk, such as people might be worried that a tenant might stay in their place and they will just get their place somehow. So Colombia's constitution protects private property, is one of our main principles. So basically, this situation can be taken care of. It's basically a launching process in which takes from 3 to 4 months. So although there are risks, there are certain ways in which you can avoid this risk or reduce them as much as possible and manage them. The Nexo Business Group can provide you with assistance with any of these activities, either bringing funds, protecting your assets here in Colombia, acquiring your visa through these investments, getting the right context to perform your real estate projects, and even accessing off-market opportunities such as foreclosures, real estate auctions, etc. And on a final note, some people or constantly our clients ask us about financing in Colombia. Question is, can I, as a foreigner, obtain a mortgage, for example, in Colombia? The answer is yes, you can. I, for instance, could provide you with context that could help you obtain a mortgage. Nevertheless, when you ask me whether it's a good idea or not, what I can tell you is that most of our clients or our clients so far have opted out of this. They would rather take a loan from their home country because interest rates here in Colombia are quite high. So that was it for the presentation. Thank you so much for paying attention. Now we'll open up a space for questions.
There is a
All right.
question. Yeah, can you read it and answer it?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes. I'm seeing the questions in the chat. So for the recording, that was answered. Could you recommend some good real estate attorneys? I have read about some on expert groups or looked at Google reviews, but I'm still not confident and would love to learn about some recommendations from people in the field. So I'm a little bit biased in terms of recommending this. Obviously, we have inside of our business group, we have a law firm that specializes in corporate, tax and accounting, immigration, and real estate law. We work very hard to provide a high quality service that meets the international standards for people who are coming here into Colombia. Nevertheless, if you wish to consider another real estate attorney for this endeavor and wish to have a second opinion on those attorneys, I would be more than happy to provide it. I know that there are people in the market who are also doing a good job and providing good services. So, but I would definitely need to recommend you to contact Nexo Legal for that matter.
Thank you very much. Could you please write it down? I mean, I just kind of learned about this webinar through a friend, so I'm actually not really sure what is the name of the company.
Yes, of course. I'm writing the name and the webpage, so you can visit us.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. Have the visa investment rules recently changed? Was the currently minimum investment for property investments? So yes, although this is not my area of expertise, I must say we do have an immigration department that I'll be more than happy to connect you to. I can answer this question. There was a a regulation change that was applied in October of last year. Basically, what happened in terms of real estate investment visas was that the residency through real estate investment was taken away, and now there is only the migrant type real estate investment visa, which requires for you to invest at least 350 times the minimum monthly Colombian wage, that is around 406 million pesos, which, if I'm not mistaken, is currently around $90,000. Nevertheless, we can verify that information. But yeah, I hope I answered your question.
Can I follow up on this reply? Is it this 406 million? Does it include all those like fees, like 1%? I actually took a picture of it, like 1% that is going to the real estate agent, and
No,
There's-
that is just the requirement by law. That's basically what needs to be shown that was invested into the property itself. That doesn't necessarily include those costs.
Okay, thank you.
You're most welcome.
Okay, does somebody else has another answer, something they want to say?
Yes, I see another question. Carolina asked.
Yeah, I know.
So yes, we do have good contacts in terms of developers, contractors, people that have certainly been sanctioned by us. So in Loyalty Property Advisors, what we focus on is helping real estate investors coming into the country to connect to the right people, to understand the real estate market, navigate it correctly, get the right information. So feel free to contact us at Loyalty Property Advisors, and we'll be more than happy to connect you to developers here in the country. I will be writing down the webpage. Just feel free to go ahead and contact us through there, and we'll be happy to connect you to developers here to help you build your home here in Medellin. Do you think the government could change the renting rules due to the gentrification in Medellin? No, I personally doubt it. I highly, highly doubt it. So what has been happening is that they have been applying, or through tax reforms and such, a higher scrutiny when it comes to this platforms for short-term rentals such as Airbnb. Nevertheless, the whole gentrification aspect, I've verified that there is not an actual concern from locals in terms of gentrification happening here. We saw basically the posters that were going around Provenza that became a little bit viral. When you look at those posters and you look at the bottom of them, you will find a Twitter account that's basically belongs to a person that used to be part of the current current administration in Medellin that's deciding to run for councilor. But when you talk to most people, to the majority of people who are involved in the industry or not in general, Colombians don't have any type of resilience against foreigners who are coming here and getting these properties in like prime locations for higher amounts. Even like if you look at that situation specifically, most time the rentals are being done by like the owners are Colombian who are renting for higher prices. And it's like you look at it from two different aspects. One is gentrification, which in Medellin has happened without foreigners coming here beforehand. In fact, I live in a neighborhood that could be considered a gentrified neighborhood. Used to be like fields, nobody wanted to live here, but then construction companies just took this area and it boomed. And it had nothing to do with foreigners. And now the whole other thing is this whole political strategy of creating an enemy that I foresee that is happening throughout that situation. Some take Venezuelans, some take other foreigners, but at the end of the day, it's just a very dirty strategy and doesn't represent the reality of how people feel. So yeah, I don't think that the government will be applying any type of rules due to gentrification. I don't think that the government is actually concerned about this right now, and it's rather trying to bring in more foreign investment into the country, which, as you can see through the past months, has been rising, and is one of the upcoming biggest investment opportunities here in the country. Okay. What are some precautions to consider when sorry, I wasn't reading for everyone. I was reading for myself. What are some precautions to consider when purchasing new construction apartments? As in, how can you ensure the developer is going to complete the project? So first things first, reputation is very important. I would recommend that you try to find out as much as you can in terms of not only the developer, but also the trustee, the trust fund or company that will be getting the funds to get this project started as well, just to make sure that all of them are reliable. Besides that, it will be a matter of just making sure that you have good advice in terms of the contracts that you're signing, what you're looking at. Again, taking into account the recommendations that I made, making sure that the project that you're investing in is accurately priced, that you're making a good investment, and all those sort of things. But in terms of the developer, I would recommend mostly making that type of investigation of their reputation, whether they've done projects before, how have they gone, are they reputable? Just ask people who invest here, people that you know. Here in Colombia, investments, when it comes to real estate investments, asking people, asking around is very important, because, as I mentioned, we don't have this centralized information or data mechanisms such as the MLS. So it's almost important that we find out as much as we can from all the sources possible. For investing that 406 million or more, how many years is the visa for? So that investment visa can be granted from 1 to 3 years. The recommendation is that you make an investment taking into consideration that you might want to renew it eventually, because the visa does add up for you to be able to ultimately apply for a residency in 5 years. So you can certainly renew it, but your property will need to still meet those requirements, like the 350 times. So here, from here in 3 years, it might not meet the requirement if it's just for 106. So the recommendation is that you purchase a property that's a little bit above that, taking into consideration what happened with inflation, etc. So you're able to renew your visa when you reapply and add up the time necessary to eventually apply for your residency, which has no limit of time. That would just allow you to stay here indefinitely. All right. Can you explain more about the trustee? I assume this means escrow. Yes, that's right. That's right. That means escrow is not used for all real estate transactions. Is mostly used for new constructions, as you mentioned. So for these new constructions, that's when I would mention it's important to take this trustee or these escrow into account as well, making sure it's a reputable company that is familiar with these type of projects. My recommendation is that if nobody knows about them and they haven't done any type of project before, just stay away from it. It's already sending bad signals. And as I mentioned, Colombia does offer very good opportunities for investment, but it does have risks, and you must keep those risks into account if you want to avoid running into any type of trouble. Some of good examples will be Alianza Valores, Acciones y Valores are good examples of escrow companies, which we constantly work with as well. Question more on residency and taxes. Hope not too much off topic. If obtaining the resident investor visa, can the Colombian government charge you taxes on your salary produced in another country even when there is double taxation treaty in place? What about salary produced in the last 6 months before becoming a resident in Colombia? So it's important to, it is a little bit off topic, it's certainly. We're coming into the taxes, nevertheless, that's why working with Nexo Legal is so optimal because we can help you out in a more comprehensive way. So in regards to taxes and what you're asking, it's important to differentiate between being a migrant resident and a tax resident in Colombia. Now, tax residents in Colombia are taxed on worldwide income. If you have a double taxation treaty, then obviously there are ways to work that. Even with the US, which is a country which we don't have a double taxation treaty, funnily, there are ways to reduce the taxes that you paid in the US in the taxes that you paid here. Nevertheless, that it's very important that you have a good accountant that understands this whole situation, so you perform throughout tax plan or tax strategy for your specific case, so you're able to reduce tax burdens as much as possible. So getting the residency itself, like the migrant residency, doesn't mean that you need to pay taxes. There are ways that you could get the residency and not necessarily become a tax resident, which we could have obviously another webinar about these taxes for foreigners in Colombia. But yeah, it's not necessarily related to one another. Now, how can you do it? We can talk about it a little bit more with the Nexo group for sure. You're
Okay.
welcome.
I think in this way we can just okay, there's one more question. We can
Yes.
also, I'm gonna make a post in our Digital Nomads Colombia Facebook group. So if there is other questions that we couldn't answer today, you can just put your questions in there and we're gonna make sure Mateo answered these questions. So this is gonna be the
Yes,
last question.
Yes, and if I don't know the answer to the question, feel free to ask me about taxes, visas, real estate, all of that. As I mentioned, I'm not an expert in all these areas, but we do have experts in all these areas in our team that will be more than happy to help you and answer all of your questions. So finally, the last question is, do you or your company have cooperative investors where one can be part of a group investment portfolios? In terms of a specific portfolios, no, we're working on that. That's something that we're building from foreign investors into Colombia and also from Colombian investors into the US. Nevertheless, we don't have a specific portfolios. What we do have is many alliances with different developers who are trusted here in the city, who are developing obviously this type of projects that don't require for you to buy the apartment, but you know, you can invest a percentage and get a percentage of the investment, just crowdfunding and this type of investment models. Besides, obviously, an individual getting the apartment yourself, remodeling, which we can also help you out in obtaining in case you wish to have a model of investment that's more related to flipping or this sort of thing. But through Loyalty Property Advisors, we can definitely connect you to the specific context that you will need in the market to be able to perform your real estate investments in Colombia properly and safely.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're most welcome.
Thank you, Stock, for your question. And okay, that's it. Thank you, Mateo, very much. I just have a little announcement. We're looking for volunteers in the association. We are working from our hearts, as I said before. So if you have a project, if you have an idea you want to work with the association, if you have an idea for a webinar we can do, any idea is welcome too. So thank you everybody for being here. Thank you for joining us. And
Oh, and sorry, Caroline, to interrupt you. One last thing before we leave, since I saw that
yeah.
someone mentioned it. The consultations that we receive from the people from the webinar of the Digital Nomads Group will be free of cost. They will have no cost. So feel free to reach out, take advantage of the situation. We do charge a little bit for a consultation. Nevertheless, the idea is to really open up this space and to provide value to the members of the Digital Nomads in Colombia Group. So thank you so much for having me again. Thank you so much, everyone, for your attention and your time. I hope this was valuable for everyone, and I'll be looking forward to connect with you later on.
Right. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and thank you, Mateo, for that. And I'll see you in the next webinar, everybody. Bye-bye.